Hey everyone, today we're discussing policy-based access control. What it is, how it works, when you should use it, and more importantly, when you shouldn't use it. Let's dive in. First up, policy-based access control, or PBAC, basically revolves around two major components, a policy engine and a policy language. The policy engine takes in rules and data and gives you a decision. And typically, that decision is allow or deny. It provides a way of declaratively writing policies as code and then using those policies as part of a decision-making process. Now, these rules are written in a simple declarative language, which is called a policy language. And these are typically logic languages that are formally proven to be correct for a certain class of authorization operations. And some examples include Rego in Open Policy Agent or OPA and Cedar in AWS Verified Permissions. So how does a policy engine work in context of an application? The policy engine can be directly embedded in your app or run as a sidecar or even sit behind a proxy. It evaluates rules quickly, especially when all the data it needs is available locally or at the time of request. PBAC really shines when the decisions are stateless, fast, and local. A typical query pattern is you have an input, you have a policy evaluation, and then you get a decision. And you get really good performance when all of this information needed is available at hand. In addition, integration into an existing tech stack is not very complicated and is typically done via an SDK or a sidecar, a webhook, or even an admission controller. And this process can be straightforward because usually it's just a decision API like allow or deny. A very good use case for using PBAC is in the case of a HTTP filter. You've got the IP address, you've got some headers, you've got the HTTP method and even the URL. That's all the information you need right there in the request. PBAC works great in this scenario. It evaluates the policy using all the data you provided and it returns the data very quickly. But there are some cases where PBAC can fall short. Essentially with PBAC, you're required to collect and pass in all the necessary data to the policy engine to evaluate this policy. And now that works well in a stateless environment, but becomes challenging when you need to reason about context that lives outside of the request. Let's call this ambient context. Take something like a Google Docs style permission. Now imagine a request comes in saying user A wants to access document X. Great, you have a user ID, you have a document ID, and that's it, right? But how do you actually determine if this access should be granted? Who is this user? What teams are they on? Has this document been shared with that team? Whether someone with sharing rights has granted them access, has the user authored this document or inherited permissions from somewhere else? All of this is ambient context, and all of this data and relationships exist behind the scenes, outside of the request itself. In my previous video, I described Google Zanzibar, which is the internal authorization system that powers all of Google's services. And how Zanzibar handles this is by modeling all of these relationships directly in a permissions database. So when you ask, can user A access document X, the system doesn't just check a static rule. It actually walks through a relationship graph to answer confidently based on all of this ambient context. Now, policy languages give you the flexibility of modeling different types of access control systems, such as attribute-based access control ABAC or relationship-based access control REBAC. But the same problem really persists. You have to fetch the data at the time of the decision. Also, as each evaluation is local, this data fetching can be an issue at scale, and you have to pay special consideration into how you architect this data. And finally, these policies are written in powerful languages which can result in domain-specific code that is difficult to understand and hard to maintain, especially at scale. So when should you use PBAC? Well, when the decisions are small, fast, self-contained, and don't change very often, PBAC can really shine. But when relationships matter, data is huge, and scale is critical, that's when you're probably better suited to using a Zanzibar-like system. Some use cases could include things like sharing documents across a large team, managing access in an organization, or even building a social graph. Hope that helped clear things up, and let me know in the comments how you're handling access control in your apps. Do you use PBAC? Do you use something like Zanzibar, or even you're blending both? And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more content on authorization. See you soon.